the collector of the silt. The first thing that should have hit me was the familiar smell of my grandmother's home. The scent of lemongrass soup simmering over a charcoal stove, the sweet smoke of incense from her small shrine, the earthy perfume of the damp soil after a midday rain. That was the smell of my childhood, the smell of returning. But it was. The moment I stepped off the dusty bus from Phnom Penh, a different scent assaulted me, something sharp and unwelcome. It was metallic, like old coins left out in the monsoon, a coppery tang that coated the back of my throat. It clung to the humid air, heavy and suffocating, overriding everything else. The village was silent. Not the peaceful, late afternoon quiet I remembered, but a dead, watchful silence. The usual chorus of children laughing and dogs barking was gone. Even the air seemed to hang still, waiting. My grandmother's house stood on its tall wooden stilts at the edge of the village, overlooking the small tributary of the great Mekong. And that's when I saw it, the water. It wasn't the familiar muddy brown, rich with the life-giving silt that made our lands fertile. It was a thick, reddish-brown sludge, moving with a sickening slowness. It looked like blood, old and diluted, and it stained the base of the stilts a dark, angry rust color. I quickened my pace, my sandals kicking up clouds of red dust. The evening chorus of cicadas had started, but it was wrong. It wasn't the steady, rhythmic hum of a normal night. It was a frantic, high-pitched shriek, a wall of sound that felt like a desperate warning. I called out her name as I climbed the worn wooden steps. Yi San, Aundara has come home. The door creaked open before I reached it. She stood there, a small, frail figure silhouetted against the dim light of the single bulb inside. She looked older than I remembered from just a few months ago, her skin stretched tight over her cheekbones, her eyes wide with a fear I had never seen in her before. In her trembling hands, she clutched a string of white jasmine flowers, holding it like a shield. "You should not have come," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "Yi, what's wrong? What happened to the river?" I asked, stepping inside. The metallic smell was even stronger in here, seeping up through the floorboards. She didn't answer my question. She just stared past me, out towards the rust-colored water. "It has come to collect," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "The debt is due." She shuffled over to the window, her gaze fixed on the muddy bank below. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the jasmine. Its sweet scent was a tiny, fragile island in an ocean of metallic rot. And then I heard it. It started from the edge of the water, from the thickest part of the coppery mud. A slow, heavy dragging sound. It was a wet, sucking noise, the sound of immense weight being pulled through thick sludge. S-H-H-H-H thump, S-H-H-H-H thump. It was the sound of something ancient and scaled, something impossibly heavy, pulling itself onto the bank. It was not a sound of aggression, not the sound of a predator hunting for food. It was patient, methodical. It was the sound of collection, as if it were simply claiming something that already belonged to it, a debt long, long overdue. My grandmother began to pray, her words lost in the frantic screaming of the cicadas. And I stood there frozen, the modern skepticism I'd built up in the city melting away into a primal fear I hadn't felt since I was a child afraid of the dark. The smell, the silence, the sound, it all meant something. Something was terribly wrong in my village, and it was crawling out of the river. The night was long and filled with a tension so thick you could taste it. My grandmother, Yi San, refused to sleep. She sat on her thin mat, facing the window, her string of jasmine now wrapped around her wrist. Every time the dragging sound would start up again from the riverbank, she would flinch, her lips moving in silent prayer. I tried to reason with her, to reason with myself. "Yi, it must be a crocodile. A big one, maybe. Or perhaps logs floating down from upstream." She just shook her head, her eyes never leaving the darkness outside. "Crocodiles hunt. Logs drift," she whispered. This is different. It measures, it waits. It knows the weight of every promise." I didn't understand. I offered to go down to take a flashlight and look. The thought terrified me, but the sight of her fear was worse. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "No, you must not. To be seen by it is to be marked. It is not our family's turn, not yet." Not yet, the words chilled me to the bone. Whose turn was it? Sleep was impossible. The shrieking of the cicadas was a constant drill against my skull, and underneath it the slow, rhythmic drag shhhh thump, shhhh thump. Sometimes it sounded close, right under the house. Other times it seemed to be further down the riverbank, near the home of our neighbors. I lay on my mat, staring at the thatched ceiling, my mind racing. In Phnom Penh, problems had logical solutions. A bad business deal, a corrupt official, a traffic jam. You could navigate them, pay someone off, or just wait. This was different. This felt elemental, ancient, and utterly beyond my comprehension. The next morning, the sun rose into a hazy, coppery sky. The metallic smell remained. The river was still the color of dried blood. I walked out onto the small balcony, looking down at the riverbank. And there, in the soft, rust-colored mud, I saw them. Tracks. But they weren't footprints. It was a single, wide furrow, as if a massive log, wider than a man, had been dragged from the water's edge up the bank. The furrow was deep, and on either side there were strange, arcing scrape marks, like something had been pulling itself along with giant claws. The trail led from the water and went directly towards the stilt posts of the house belonging to Tom Moan, an old fisherman who lived 2 houses down. The trail stopped at the base of his stilts, churned the mud into a messy circle, and then led straight back into the polluted water. A cold dread washed over me. I looked over at Tom Moan's house. It was silent. No smoke from his morning cook fire. No sign of him mending his nets on his porch. "He is gone," Yi San said softly from behind me. "What do you mean, gone? Maybe he went to the market early." "The market road is dry," she said, pointing a trembling finger in the opposite direction. "Its road is the water it took him. His debt was the heaviest." I had to see for myself. Ignoring my grandmother's pleas, I walked over to Tom Moan's home. The silence was unnerving. I called his name. No answer. I climbed the stairs. The door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, I was hit by a wave of that same metallic smell, but it was mixed with something else now. The smell of decay. The small, one-room house was empty. His sleeping mat was unrolled. A half-eaten bowl of rice sat on a small table, flies buzzing around it. But on the floor, leading from the door to the sleeping mat, was a trail of wet, rust-colored mud. And in the mud were flakes of something that looked like old, dark scales, the size of my thumb. Tom Moan was gone, and whatever had left that trail in the mud had come inside his house to get him. I spent the rest of the day walking through the village. It was like a ghost town. People stayed inside their homes, peering out from behind shut windows. Those I did see in the dusty lane would not meet my eyes. They offered short, clipped greetings and hurried away. The fear was a physical presence as real as the oppressive humidity. Everyone knew. No one would speak of it. I saw the sickness for the first time on a child playing near a well. He had a strange rash on his arms and legs. It wasn't red like a normal rash, but a dark, rust-brown color, like the sludge in the river had seeped into his skin. His mother quickly pulled him inside when she saw me looking. I began to notice a pattern. The houses that were the most silent, the ones where the families seemed to be hiding the deepest, were the newest ones. Tom Moan had just finished adding a new room to his house, built with fine wood he'd bought in the provincial town. Another family, the Sokyas, who had a new, loud generator they ran every night, were nowhere to be seen. Their front door was shut tight, but I could see the edge of a muddy furrow near their stairs. The new, the prosperous, the ones who had recently acquired things. Later that evening, desperate for answers, I sought out Ta Pram, the village Achar, the lay priest who presided over local ceremonies. He was a very old man, his skin like wrinkled parchment, his eyes holding the wisdom of generations. I found him in the village pagoda, the Wat lighting incense before a gilded statue of the Buddha. The air here was clean, thick with the sweet smell of sandalwood, a sanctuary from the rot outside. He listened patiently as I told him everything I had seen. The water, the sound, the tracks, Tom Moan's disappearance, the sickness. He did not seem surprised. When I was finished, he let out a long, slow sigh. "We have grown forgetful, Dara," he said, his voice soft but firm. "We have grown greedy. We take from the land, we take from the river, but we no longer give back." "Give back what? I don't understand, Ta Prom." He gestured for me to sit. "When our ancestors first settled this bend in the river, the land was poor and the water was fickle. They made a pact, not with a god, not with a demon, but with the spirit of the river itself, the ancient guardian, the Neek that sleeps in the deep mud. It is not the glorious jeweled naga you see in the temple carvings. It is older, more primal. It is the spirit of the silt, of the mud, of the earth itself." He paused, his eyes distant. "The pact was simple. The Neek would bless the water with rich silt, making our harvests plentiful and our fishing bountiful. In return, the people would show gratitude. They would live simply. They would make offerings of the first rice of the harvest, of fragrant flowers. They would never take more than they needed. The Neek is a being of balance. It does not understand money or progress. It understands debt and payment." A chilling realization began to dawn on me. The new houses, the generators. "Yes," Ta Prom nodded grimly. "A new boat with a loud engine that scares the fish. A concrete foundation that poisons the soil, taking and taking, making loud noises of your own prosperity while forgetting the quiet source of it. Every new thing, every forgotten offering, it adds to a debt. For generations, our balance was small, easily paid with simple gratitude. But now," he gestured vaguely towards the village, "the debt has grown too large. The interest has compounded. The Neek has woken not to bless, but to collect. It takes back what it is owed." "It takes people?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It takes the weight." Tom Moan's new room was a weight of pride. The Sokia family's generator was a weight of noise and arrogance. It takes the source of the debt. And the sludge in the river, that is its anger, its sickness, poisoning the water we have taken for granted. The rash on the children is a mark of the debt, a warning that payment will soon be required from their families. I felt sick. This was a logic that my city brain fought against, but that my heart, the part of me that grew up with these stories, knew to be true. "My grandmother," I said, my throat tight. "She keeps saying, 'Not yet. What about our family's debt?'" Ta Prom looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "Your parents, Dara, they were the first in a generation to leave the village for the city. They took the village's greatest treasure, its children, and gave nothing back. They broke the chain of gratitude. Your grandmother has been trying to pay their debt for years with her prayers and offerings, trying to keep the balance. But she is old. Her payments are small. The Neek is patient, but its patience is not infinite." I returned to my grandmother's house as dusk fell, my heart a cold stone in my chest. The story Ta Prom told me replayed in my mind, and suddenly, everything made a terrifying kind of sense. The silence of the village wasn't just fear, it was shame. The shame of knowing you are in debt to something you cannot repay. That night the dragging sound was closer, louder. It came from directly beneath our house. S-H-H-H-H thump, S-H-H-H-H thump. The entire house seemed to vibrate with each movement. My grandmother was breathing in shallow, ragged gasps. I touched her forehead. She was burning with fever. I pulled back my hand and saw it. On the back of my own hand, near my wrist, was a small, dark, rust-colored spot. A mark. The debt was being called in. Our family's turn had come. The storm broke just after midnight. It wasn't a normal monsoon storm. The wind howled with a human-like voice, tearing at the thatch roof. Rain came down in solid sheets, so heavy it was like the river itself was rising up to swallow the sky. And with the rain, the river did rise. The coppery sludge crept higher and higher up the stilts of our house. I could hear it lapping just a few feet below the floorboards, a thick, gurgling sound. Yi San's fever was raging. She was delirious, muttering old words in a formal Khmer I barely understood. Prayers, please, bargains. Her eyes were wide, staring at the floorboards as if she could see right through them, to the creature waiting in the sludge below. The dragging sound was gone. It had been replaced by something worse, a scraping, a slow, deliberate scratching on the wooden stilts directly under the room. It was testing the foundations, measuring the weight of the house, the weight of our lives, the weight of our debt. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would break. The single light bulb flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. The metallic smell was overwhelming, thick with the scent of decay and damp earth. I felt like I was drowning in it. "Dara," my grandmother whispered, her voice suddenly clear, cutting through her delirium. She was looking at me, her eyes filled with a desperate urgency. "The Bay say on the altar quickly." I scrambled over to the small wooden shrine in the corner of the room. There sat a small, conical offering made of folded banana leaves, holding withered flowers and 3 sticks of incense. It was a Bay say, an offering for spirits. "It is not enough," she gasped, her breath catching in her throat. The scratching from below grew louder, more insistent. A long, splintering groan echoed from one of the main support stilts. "A debt of life must be paid with life." I didn't understand, but her eyes were locked on my hand, on the rust-colored mark that had appeared there. It was darker now, and it seemed to throb with a faint warmth. "Your blood," she rasped. "The blood of the line that broke the promise. It is the only thing of value we have left to offer. It is the only payment it will understand." My mind screamed no. This was madness, folklore, superstition. But the floorboards groaned again, and the sound of a massive scale scraping against wood sent a vibration through my entire body. This was real. Whatever was out there, it was real, and it was about to tear our home apart to get to us. With a trembling hand, I picked up the small knife used for cutting fruit. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying. It was waiting. I looked at my grandmother, her small body trembling with fever, her life fading before my eyes. I looked at the mark on my hand, the sign of my family's debt, and I knew what I had to do. Closing my eyes, I sliced the tip of my thumb. The pain was sharp, but the fear was sharper. Dark red blood, my blood welled up. I squeezed my thumb over the base, letting 3 drops fall onto the wilted jasmine flowers. 3 drops for my father, my mother, and for myself. The bloodline. "Yi," I said, my voice shaking. "What do I do?" "The window," she whispered, pointing with a trembling finger. "Show it the payment is made. Renew the promise." I crawled to the open window that overlooked the churning, sludge-filled river. The wind and rain lashed at my face. I held the blood-stained offering out into the storm. "I am Dara, son of Chan, grandson of San," I shouted into the howling wind, my voice feeling small and pathetic. "My family has taken, we have forgotten, we have been ungrateful. We offer this payment, we renew the promise, we will remember." For a moment, nothing happened. Just the wind, the rain, and the gurgling water. I felt foolish, a city boy screaming ancient words into a storm. Then the sludge directly below the window began to move. It didn't swirl, it thickened. It humped upwards, forming a mound. The mound rose out of the water, mud, and rust-colored filth slewing off its sides. It was not a head. It was not a face in any human sense. It was a massive, ancient, scaled shape, broader than a fishing boat. The scales were not silver or gold like in the temple murals. They were the color of river-bottom clay, of rust, of dried blood, caked with centuries of mud. 2 things that might have been eyes opened. They were not eyes of malice or anger. They were like 2 vast, dull, tarnished coins. They held no emotion at all, only an ancient, soul-crushing emptiness. The emptiness of a ledger, of a balance sheet. They stared up at me, at the offering in my hand. I could smell it now, the source of the metallic odor. It was the creature's breath, a miasma of rot and deep earth and something akin to rust. It was the smell of forgotten promises. The creature, the neck of the silt, remained there for a long time, unmoving in the pouring rain. Its ancient, emotionless eyes were fixed on me. It was judging the offering, judging my sincerity, judging the weight of my blood against the weight of my family's debt. Then with an agonizing slowness, it lowered itself back into the water. There was no splash, no sound. It simply submerged, and the thick sludge closed over it as if it had never been there. The splintering groan from the stilt ceased. The oppressive pressure in the air lifted. The wind, though still strong, seemed to lose its angry, personal voice. I collapsed back from the window, gasping for air, the blood-stained baiser clutched in my hand. My grandmother had fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep. Her fever had broken. The storm passed before dawn. The sun rose on a world washed clean, yet forever changed. The river was no longer a thick, coppery sludge. It was a murky brown, still swollen from the rain, but it was the color of water, not blood. The metallic smell was gone, replaced by the clean scent of wet earth. But the village was not the same. It was quieter than ever before. The fear had not vanished with the creature. It had simply settled deep into the bones of the place. No one spoke of what had happened. No one mentioned Tamon or the other families who were gone. Their houses stood empty, silent monuments to a debt paid in full. The rust-colored rashes on the children faded, leaving behind faint, discolored marks on their skin, like old scars. I never returned to Phnom Penh. I couldn't. My life in the city, with its deadlines and its traffic and its trivial concerns, felt like a meaningless dream. My place was here in this house with my grandmother. My debt was here. She recovered, but she was never the same. She was frailer, more silent, and she spent most of her days weaving jasmine garlands for the river. I took it upon myself to learn the old ways from Ta Prohm. I learned the rituals, the prayers, the proper way to make an offering. I learned that what we call progress, the spirits call arrogance. What we call ambition, they call greed. It has been a year now. Every morning at sunrise, I take a small offering of flowers and rice down to the riverbank. I place it on a flat stone near the water's edge, and I say the words, renewing the promise for my family, for my village. I do it not just out of fear, but out of a deep, humbling respect. A balance must be maintained. Most days the river flows peacefully, but sometimes on a quiet evening when the air is still, I will look out at the water and I will see it. A faint, coppery sheen on the surface catching the last light of the sun. It is a subtle thing, almost imperceptible, but it is there. A reminder, a receipt. A quiet statement that the account is settled for now. The collector is patient. It sleeps in the mud and it remembers the weight of every promise, waiting for the day we forget again. So if you ever find yourself by an old river, in a place that feels forgotten by time, be careful, be humble. Do not take more than you need, and do not forget to give thanks. Because some debts are not recorded in books or on screens. They are recorded in the silt, in the water, in the very earth itself. And the collectors of those debts are ancient, and they are patient, and they always get paid.